Effective parenting technique within system. Well, I'll talk about what that means, but in terms of what you want out of this, tell me. If you want specific ideas and specific applications under specific circumstances, this is the right one. Okay, that line of the workshop, we're going to speak very, very briefly about issues around inner wisdom, because the last workshop was all about this, and personal responsibility. We're going to spend a little bit of time on something called attachment theory, which is the main developmental theory that underpins my work and the work of an increasing number of psychoanalysts, researchers, psychotherapists, etc. And then really want to focus on the strategies and addressing individual concerns. And when we talk about boundaries, no punishment, when we talk about authoritarian issues, authoritarianism is about enforcement, so there's punishment involved. So this is where I think a lot of you are going to want the focus of the workshop to be, right? Mm-hmm. Yeah? So let's make sure we get through this bit faster so we can get to here. A caveat, however, is that there's going to be nothing that you can write down on a little piece of paper to say, right, if I just do this one thing, I'll stamp it on my head, look in the mirror to remind me everything will be fine. But I can send you the entire workshop as the handout for this workshop, because there's way too much information to just put on here on a couple of pages just to get to you. So if you want these slides, by all means, give me your name and email, and I will send them to you.
We did that for the last workshop. Do we need to do it again?
Yes, because it's a different workshop. And a content warning. I'm not here to make you comfortable. I'm not here to pat you back on the back and say everything's fine. You are here because you want more ideas, right? Now, part of my style is to be relentlessly honest. And so that's what you get when you see we're here with me. And some of that might make you uncomfortable, and that's totally okay. If it stirs up anything, that's great. It's an opportunity for you to resolve it and up your game. Honestly, if anyone has a problem with that, please leave now, because I promise you I'm going to push buttons here today. Okay. That means implicit consent. Okay. The inner wisdom stuff that we talked about earlier, these quotes really summarize this. I'm going to spend just a minute on these quotes. We don't receive wisdom. We must discover it for ourselves after a journey that no one can take for us or spare us. And in terms of our children, we would love to spare our children suffering. We can't. They have to find their own way through this. And the inner wisdom stuff is essentially summarized as knowing yourself unconditionally as unconditional wholeness, goodness, and peace. From that comes many corollaries, such as we are responsible for creating our realities, because whenever we have an experience that is not that, we're telling ourselves lies about who we are. Whenever we get anxious, we think that we can be harmed or someone we love can be really harmed. We've fallen into the trap of getting lost in our thinking. I know some of you are very new to this. If you want, put a star next to your name and I'll send you the other slides as well. Wisdom is what's left after we've run out of personal opinions. And what that refers to is how we can get really lost in our personal stories. Because wisdom isn't about information, paradoxically. Wisdom isn't even about anything you can really put into words, but that inspires your words and your actions. And then one of my favorite quotes by the physicist Dr. David Bohm, thought creates the world and says, oh, I didn't do it. And what that's about is the way our thinking completely upholsters our world. I meant to bring you know those banana cases? They're so funky. I wish they had them when we were kids. And those banana cases I thought were a great metaphor for our thinking, because we're like the banana inside, and we think we're seeing the world, but we're actually seeing the inside of our own banana case. And that banana case is our thinking. Always, without exception. even when it really doesn't look like it, which is exactly what David Bowman's speaking to. The things that make us happy and distressed aren't the things that we may think they are. It comes from the thinking itself. So there's always this intervening thing. There's the circumstance, but it's our thinking about the circumstance that we're experiencing. It's never the circumstance directly, ever. Ever, ever, ever. Which means it's not the bullying that's bothering your child or bothering you. It's your thinking about the bullying that's bothering you and bothering your child. And that seems like a big ask. Just stick with it and hold the possibility. Feelings are the felt side of our thinking. We feel happy because we have a happy thought. We feel sad because we have a sad thought. We feel scared because we're having a thought that scares us. We don't feel happy because of a sunset. One example I gave earlier was, I don't know if you guys noticed, but when the couples get pregnant, you just kind of notice pregnant women around a lot more. And when I was in my pregnancy, I was like really, oh yeah, kind of in the pregnancy sister club kind of thing. And then when my baby died, I was really noticing pregnant women too, but the feeling it generated in me was very different than it had a few months previous. But it's the same circumstance, but it was my thinking that had changed. I was relating to it differently, even though it was the same stuff. Make sense? And we see it with our kids. You know, they'll be really upset one minute, and the next minute they'll be off doing something else. It's like they're just gone. They're relating to that differently. In fact, they're not relating to it at all, because it's just gone. And this is the big one to take away. We are, without exception, 100% responsible for 100% of our feelings 100% of the time, which includes circumstances in which we are truly being persecuted. This is the inner wisdom section of the whole presentation. And again, for those of you that haven't been to the previous ones, I know that this can be a big ask to ask you to take this on board. But if you just allow yourself to sit with it, get the other presentation and read up on it, it's a really big part of effective parenting. Because, do you ever hear the concept holding space? It's a psychoanalytical concept. And it comes from a guy called Winnicott, of holding space. That the parent's job is to process the feelings for the child and give them back in a way that's bearable. And so for you to hold space effectively, for you to hold your child's okayness deeply, you have to know they're okay, even when they're bleeding physically or emotionally. And it is hard. It is hard. I remember when our daughter, I don't remember what it was called. Do you remember when we got up in the night, Sasha, and she couldn't breathe at all? We had to call the ambulance?
Croup.
Pardon?
Croup.
Croup. She had croup. And I didn't know what was wrong. I didn't have a diagnosis. I didn't know about croup. But to me, what was happening was that my daughter could be dying in my arms. So I had that, and then it's like, okay, we're okay. We're okay. And then we talked about emotional freedom technique in yet another workshop. I did some tapping up and down her spine, because there are points up and down the spine. I'm holding her, she can't breathe. I'm breathing in the okayness, I'm tapping up and down her spine. I can feel her calm down, and she says, I want to go outside. But she didn't say it like that, obviously, because she could barely breathe. And so, okay. Middle of the night, it's cold, but you know, I'll follow your wisdom, whatever. Her breathing calmed down really fast. And that was what made the difference. We later found out from the A&E doctor, who had just come back from Canada on a training. Yes, do you want to say?
I had the same experience.
Yeah?
I was sitting reading a book at about 1 o'clock, and I could hear her struggling to breathe, and I didn't know what it was. And I thought she was trying to cough, so I was getting a cough. And it just sounds horrible. That sound is just not, it's not a familiar sound. So the first thing I did, I just picked up the phone and dialed 999. Within 15 minutes, the ambulance was there. And as the ambulance, the doctor just walked, he just casually said, oh, it's just croup. And I said, I don't know what croup is, I just want my child to breathe.
Yeah.
I didn't know what it was. But he just casually said, I think it may be croup. And I said, no, I just want my child to breathe.
Yes.
That's all.
What the A&E doctor told us was that cold air, we have no idea why, there's inconclusive research, we don't know about the causality, but cold air helps with croup specifically. Not asthma, not emphysema, not bronchitis, not pneumonia, but croup. But helping my daughter find her inner calm in that moment helped her body's wisdom emerge so that she was able to breathe easy again. Yeah? You have to lead first. And that's going to be a repeated message throughout. The doctor was very impressed that she came up with the idea. What's your job as a parent? Come on, you must have thought about this.
Nurture,
Nurture,
love unconditionally.
love unconditionally. Me too. Thank you, Sasha.
Educate.
I'm sorry?
Educate.
Educate. Nurture, love unconditionally.
Carer.
Pardon?
Carer.
Care. Sounds like laundry to me. Yes?
Guide them.
Guide.
Enjoy your time.
Mm.
To enable them to go into the world as a fully functioning adult, make them feel much.
Here, there's an outcome here.
Share experiences.
Mm.
Give them opportunities.
You got a good list. Very impressive, you guys. I left out the enjoyment of them, which is interesting because I really care about that a lot. To guide your children into being happy, contributing, responsible, self-fulfilled, moral, functioning, independent adult to the utmost of their abilities. Not your wishes. I would add on here, it sounds awful translated directly from French, but there's a saying in français, which I've forgotten exactly, but it goes, children have to seduce their parents. And it doesn't mean that. It means that the children have to have a sense of their carers, their parents, enjoying them, being charmed by them. It's so critical, absolutely critical for their sense of agency. I have to put on charm and make a note to myself to revise that slide. What's your kids' jobs?
Rubbish.
Oh.
Introduce washlight.
Produce housework. Yeah. What else?
Need lifts.
Pardon?
Need lifts.
Need lifts. Respect.
To grow, thrive, play. Play.
Play, grow, thrive.
Learn.
By the way, the stuff you had down here with nurture and educating and caring and guiding, those were strategies for the outcome of your children being independent, functioning, happy people. Mm-hmm. Their job is also very simple, and a lot of these are strategies to continually become themselves, which means be happy, contributing, responsible, self-fulfilled, moral, functioning, independent adults to the utmost of their abilities, not our choices. Which includes the development of sound thinking. To teach our kids how to think, because it doesn't come naturally. Thinking does, but not doing it well, that's for sure. So critical thinking skills, knowing how to look at stuff and see how it's put together, saying, oh wow, that person is trying to make us buy that toothpaste because we can have a nice car. How does that work? Reasoning ability, an awareness of and ability to defend against manipulation. And so there's a lot of peer stuff in here as well, especially from the ages of 10 onwards, and particularly even that in the teenage years. And emotional intelligence. Their job of becoming themselves includes being emotionally intelligent because they are emotional intelligence. They are that inner wisdom. What's not your job as a parent?
choose for them.
To choose for them? Well, sometimes.
Well, yeah, well,
So there's something about
Principal things,
limiting
but
choices for them.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's not our job to make all our
All the
children's choices. What else is not our job?
live our lives through them.
Totally. To not live our lives through them, which is related to the first one. Yeah.
Clear up after.
Yes, it's totally there as when they're babies, and then that decreases, you know, like in a sharp line like that as they get older. My daughter was cleaning up her spills from when she was 2. It's not your job to make your kids happy, believe it or not. You can't make them happy. Only they can do that for themselves, but you can teach them how to make themselves happy. Very, very critically different. Absolutely vitally different. Because when you know that that's not your job, then you take that off your to-do list. And then you're left with the real parenting. Seeing a couple of smiles. Phew, let me off the hook. You can point them in the direction of it, but you can't go there for them. They got to do that for themselves. What's not your children's job? We actually had the answer already. Pardon?
Live the dreams we wanted to through them.
Yeah. They're not there to fulfill us. They're not there to make us happy. With their achievements or their compliance. However, and it's a big however, totally different from accountability. I'm all for 100% accountability. So at lunchtime today, when my daughter ran off with her friend that she hasn't seen in a while, and she ran off to go play and do the books, we're like, Alia, you left all your lunch here. And I could have just scooped it up in 10 seconds. We took the extra 2 minutes, 3 minutes, 4 minutes, to chase her down. She like picked up one thing, ran to the bin, came back, picked up one more thing, ran to the bin, came back, picked up one more thing, ran to the bin, I kid you not. But it was worth it, because that was holding her accountable and teaching her accountability. It also teaches her that I'm not there to clean up her messes. That's her job. And we do it lovingly. You know, we didn't say, oi, what'd you leave that for to people to trip over? You think I'm your slave to... It's like, hey honey, time for you to clean up your stuff. Very gentle, very lovely.
That goes back to something that we were talking this morning about if we all ultimately, our goal is to see our children happy. It's not our perception of what makes them happy or what makes them happy. It's their own creation of what their happiness or contentness in themselves is.
Gets inspired by
That's
it,
what we
yeah.
actually what we're seeking, aren't we, really?
Yeah.
Often they're going to be a particular thing or achieve something. It's their self-worth or their self-happiness is what we want to see as parents.
Yeah, totally, absolutely. And it leads on to issues around choice and what kind of choices our children can healthily have. I'll tell you right now, our daughter doesn't sleep on a bed. She sleeps on the floor. It's not because I make her because I'm mean. It's that she has this bunk bed that's raised without the lower bunk bed, and she's made a cave under there, and she loves it so much she's padded it out with blankets that her Nana made. And so she sleeps on the blankets that Nana made, with the duvet on top. And that's her choice. I just have to wash Nana's blankets more often than I was originally anticipating. You know, for her, that place is restful. She doesn't sleep in her bed anymore. Okay, what's the big deal? Her back doesn't hurt, she's fine. I get a little bit of extra laundry, so what? But I'm not going to clean up the rubbish she left. That's a different issue. Do you see the difference? It's not about minimizing your work. It's about what the work is for. For the extra work of doing the extra laundry, that's about honoring her subjectivity and honoring what inspires her for peacefulness and rest. But that mess on the floor was hers. And it was worth the extra time. The extra work wasn't in picking it up. The extra work was in reminding her about her responsibilities and her accountability. See the difference? Setting negative examples. We can't help it because we're not perfect. We will set negative examples. So a lot of it depends on the intensity with which we set them and the frequency. If you index your happiness to how well you're doing at work, you are teaching your child to index their happiness to their grades. That's it. Oops. We don't mean to do these things. If you want your kids to be resilient, but there are times when you dramatically are not, unapologetically, guess what? Oops. And I put the unapologetically there on purpose because, again, we all slide. We all have little moments, but we're accountable too for our moments of lack of resiliency. And if we want to teach them, we have to be held accountable as well, hold ourselves accountable, so we model that for them over and over and over and over. So if I get snipey, I apologize to everybody. Even if I just got snipey at Sasha, I'll apologize to Alia as well. Because I didn't mean for her to have that example, and I'll say that. And this is a real challenge, especially for a British audience. And I do apologize. You want your children to think well of themselves. You may even be aware of all the happiness research that says that in order to be happy, people need a really solid core sense of self-worth. But you kind of a bit shy about thinking that you're great. Guess what? You're modeling. And it's a real cultural speed barrier, bump, wall, whatever you want to call it. You have to lead by example. You have to love yourself first. Because what you're modeling is a way of relating to the self. It's called mentalizing. There's a really great book called by John Allen called this is Coping with Trauma, Hoping for Understanding. Fantastic chapter on mentalizing, your relationship with your thinking. Is this okay? After 20 years of psychotherapy, I was still pretty messed up. And when I first came to the energy methods, such as emotional freedom technique, there was the hardest exercise to do. Even as an American, and even, I say, with humor and self-deprecation, a Jewish New Yorker, to look in the mirror and say, Shoshana, I love you, and then see what happens inside. It was so hard. I squirmed at it. After 20 years of psychotherapy, 20 years. And I don't mean like, you know, over 20 years I was in and out of it. I mean over 25 years I was in it for 20, okay? I still didn't love myself. It was doing the tapping thing that got me there, but it was one of the hardest things I've ever done healing-wise on my journey, was do that I love you thing. But again, if you want your children to love themselves, you have to go there first. It's not easy, I know. Simple to say, not easy to do. Again, simple but not easy. When you let go of your insecurities, you lead. Especially for dads, how many of you know that you're absolute heroes to your kids? No, but no, the guys raised your hands, oh my God. Hey. At one time, Alia thought that Sasha could lift a lorry. Not just a mini, she said a truck actually. We're heroes to our kids. We are their worlds. Even with the people at school, we mean so much to them. They look up to us so much, so much. And like any heroes can get tarnished in the whole feet of clay thing. It's up to us to keep our feet clean. And keeping our feet clean has to do with cleaning up our insecurities. And again, I told you I'd be pushing buttons, and I'd be giving you challenges. Because you came here for parenting, for techniques with your kids, and I'm telling you that you have to give up all your insecurities. That's a big ask. I know it's a big ask. But if you want to be the best parent you can be, because if you don't, you're going to teach them that being insecure and living with that and accommodating around it and diminishing themselves for it's okay. It is okay to teach them because they're okay no matter what you teach them. But if you want to give them a leg up, then help them put all that to the side from the beginning. You have to do that for yourself, yes?
But it's not achievable. without 20 years of psychotherapy.
Yes.
I mean, not 20 years, because even just thinking about your previous slide, I mean, it's overwhelming. You know, I really liked the way you describe how you asked your daughter to clear out
Mm.
her rubbish.
Yeah.
It's fine, you did great if you managed to do it lovingly. But say you do it 3 times in, how old is your daughter?
She's 8.5 now.
Okay, so you still have to do it. So you do it 3 times in a day, 7 days a whole month, a whole year. So she's still not picking it up without you saying, come on, pick it up. I mean, I struggle to do it lovingly. I just say, pick it up. I told you before to pick it up, you pick it up. So it's really, it's overwhelming. But also when you say you set examples, I mean, it's just so difficult to be conscious of everything you do, everything you say.
It's impossible to be.
It's hard. How can you ever do it without having somebody sitting on your shoulder and saying, take a deep breath, calm down, say it in this way, take a deep breath, don't do that, take a deep breath, do this.
I have some good news for you. You do have somebody on your shoulder telling you, take a deep breath. You do have somebody inside to say, take it easy, take a step back. That's your inner wisdom talking to you. Like it was my daughter's inner wisdom to say, go outside, half naked on a very cold night to breathe when she couldn't. Your inner wisdom is there for you. When you connect to that, you then take inspired action. So you don't need the formulas. If we needed the formula for every situation, yeah, it would be impossible. But luckily, that's not the way it works. It's not about the formulas, although there are certain techniques you can have, sure, yeah? But within the system of the family, the more everybody connects to their knowing that their goodness, the more everybody knows that things are okay, then shepherding them through their selfishness and taking you for granted gets a lot easier. And it's about holding that relentlessly. We're going to have slides about boundaries, just as a little preview. Did you know that inconsistent boundary holding is actually engenders addictive boundary pushing in children? It's human psychology. We'll talk about more about that later. You've got to be relentless about your boundaries. It addresses issues of different parenting styles and different rules. Oh, you really, that phrase, giving yourself a rod to beat yourself with. Inconsistent boundary holding is one of the thickest, nastiest, specky ones.
Just to ask a question, I do endorse what you're saying about, saying your pattern for asking your daughter to clear up. I try to do something similar. What I notice particularly about my daughter is that her response to that will be, no, you do it. She's 5. So that's one thing you should say. And also, like I said, the relentlessness of it, I know that she will persistently refuse and not in a rebellious way, but just it's like passive resistance. No response.
Passive resistance is aggressive too. Yes.
So I'm thinking, yes, what I have to do is I have to keep saying to you, I have to keep modelling this, please come and clear up, please come and clear up, please don't eat with your fingers, please sit on a chair, And we do this so exhaustively that I feel I need something kind of on top of that when I'm feeling like that. She was like, I can't keep this up any longer. I want to poke you in the eye. If I believed in corporal punishment, it would be so easy and I would just thrash the hell out of you. But we have to go back to this situation. And I think I'm not getting anywhere here. And that's when I start to sort of lose patience. The 5 millionth time that she said, no, and that's where it starts to get...
Part of what you're talking about, and we have a few slides on this later, is about rule setting and how to set rules, especially with gifted children, because as I've said in just about every presentation I've done on this, most gifted children want to know why, how, why not, in what cases, and if there's a smidgen millimeter of exception, where's that?
Is it just kind of relentless? Is it that 59 times a day she thinks there's a boundary, I'm going to find out what it is. There's another one, I'm going to find out what that is.
Yes.
Yes. So
yes.
How much longer can you keep this up, child?
Forever they can do it. Yeah, because... But if you see it as them developing themselves, instead of resisting you, it gets easier. Your framing of it is different. Yeah? Because it's a bit like them saying, well, why is the sky blue, and why is the grass green, and, why only 4 legs on the table, and, all kinds of stuff, yeah? They're just like that.
I think the other way of it is also, you know, for whatever reason we get sucked into watching police camera stop or Big Brother or anything like that, okay, that we found with our daughter Emma, who's 5, that partly we're the best live television show she's got control over the housemates.
Oh, because she knows where your buttons are.
You know, because partly she'll do something and you might, because you're tired or you're whatever, you start to have a reaction and then she's just saying, hello, I'm controlling the robots. Yeah. And that is amusing to her. She's sort of worked that out because of the mind she has.
Absolutely.
She does it with her brother. He all finishes dinner early and say, please might get down from the table, thank you much for loving me. Say, oh no, so we're going to sit at the table as a family until everyone's finished. So Emma will then be swinging off the back of the chair, giving it. It's getting more and more and more. Emma, will you just eat your dinner because I'm really busy, I want to get this.
Well, it's also calling Emma on her selfishness.
Yeah. She's
Calling
not doing
her.
anything wrong. She's
No.
just realising that.
She's being selfish, and that is wrong. Because that's about accountability. She hasn't violated the house rules, but she's being selfish, and it's okay to hold her accountable for being selfish. Yeah?
Which we do. But then
Great.
finally, they're watching this live reality television show that they're the producer.
Yes.
And that, when my son used to ask questions like, why is the sky blue, why is the... And I found that very much easier, because you can answer, you know, or if you don't know...
We can look them up on Google.
Yeah, or whatever. And then they get to the time of day, it's like, sorry, too late to talk about nuclear physics, Mummy's tired, go to bed. But with her, because it's not about the factual things, it's about playing out and
Process.
going on around, and I find that much more tiring.
The more... Well, I wouldn't trust a lot of the information on Google about this stuff. We're going to get more to rule setting and why. Because when you have the agreed upon discussions and the family meetings and stuff like that, then you have that as your reference point. Because then it's not because I say so, it's because you agreed that was your word. You gave your word to do this, actually. So it becomes very different, especially for gifted children that like to be independent. That is important to them. Having that congruent sense of self by keeping their words important. Getting them to buy in. I've talked before about you being marketers and salespeople. Less specific, putting them to their happiness and self-worth by living yours daily. And responsibility as well, not getting caught in being her private reality TV show. They also say you need to make mistakes and how to deal with it too. That's part, again, of being human. And just ties in with attachment theory. Process, both emotional and physical, is stored as procedural memory. Procedural memory are motor skills like tennis, sports, holding a fork, walking, mentalizing. It's all in the same bits of the brain. Whereas, you know, facts like this is what the rules are is episodic memory, semantic memory. And that's really important because it means that you have countless repetitions. And the cool thing about having countless repetitions, if you screw a few up here and there, it doesn't really matter, it just evens out. Again, the happiness research is clear. You need self-worth to be happy. Doesn't come from your achievements or compliance or somebody approving of us, which is its own kind of addiction. Your true sense of self-worth comes from your unconditional knowing of yourself as being a good person. And this knowing makes you failure-proof and shame-proof, but not at all guilt-proof, because that's about accountability. This is big stuff, but I want to kind of rush through that so I can get more to the practical things. Attachment theory. This is the bridge quote by Dr. Brad Blanton, who wrote Radical Honesty and was trained by Fritz Perls. I believe the ways we take care of ourselves so poorly arise out of the starvation we experience from being cut off from the nourishment of commonplace experience, including the experience of intimacy, the nourishment of intimacy. We are responsible for cutting ourselves off from experience by substituting our interpretations of reality, our thinking, for the reality. We'll race through this one as well. Attachment's a formal term developed by these scientists, and it comes to mean a non-optional biological drive to proximity. It's mammalian. We're mammals, we have attachment. So do apes. So do deer. So do lions. Attachment is not love. This is critical. Attachment is not love. Attachment is proximity to a caregiver, especially in time of distress. That's it. A lot of what happens in our parenting is unfortunately not love, and a lot of what happened to us and our experience of our parenting was not love. A lot of it was attachment. Very different. And again, we are in a room here full of people who are child-centered. So the percentage of stuff we do that's not love is going to be much lower overall than kind of the average. So you're here, you're doing more than most parents on the planet just by showing up. I said before, I get my parenting MOT'd once a year. I open it to the scrutiny of an extraordinarily perceptive, insightful person who can, you give her this much and she sees the iceberg and the contours of the iceberg and the density and where the faults are. And we go to her once a year. And it's because I know that I'm not perfect and I could always use a bit of an upgrade. I know that my well-being doesn't count on not getting any critique, so I can handle it. So it comes in. What's love? Not a trick question. You just know that it's not attachment. Nobody wants to answer.
Which kind?
Unconditional, yeah.
Pardon?
Well, to my children, unconditional.
Unconditional.
I mean, characteristics.
So part of what makes love love is the unconditionality.
Putting the other person first.
Mm. I think you might have quoted one of those things on the slide there. Uh-huh.
It's non-judgmental.
Mm. What a great group.
Ah.
You all okay with that? Love is a verb, not an attitude? Because someone can say, I love you, but be hitting you around the face really hard with a blunt object, you're going to feel love? It's what you do. And it can be informed by the attitude of unconditionality, sure. There it is, the unconditional. Keeping the other in mind, thinking about the needs of the other. Obviously that comes in later with children. Safe touch. This goes on to 5 love languages that I don't all have time to talk about today, but there's the information to look that up is in the resources. Safe touch, respect, care, warm feeling and expressing that warmth. Attentiveness, being curious. You don't want to do your homework? Why, darling? Why? Tell me what's going on for you. What you thinking about it? That curiosity is really critical. Especially with gifted children, they can come up with the most strange answers. I would never think of that. Reliability, nurturing, support, holding space. We talked about that holding space, the unconditionality. And where that charmed stuff comes in is that warm feeling and expression of really enjoying each other's company. Which is limited for some children who have limited capacities for connection. And that's part of a parental grief to handle. When there's not enough of this, we adapt. When there is enough, then we build the self-worth and the core sense of self that most psychologists get fooled into thinking, because the predictive factor of resilience is family support, then that must mean that that creates resilience. It's more like that love helps connect them to their inner wisdom. So be aware of that causality. Isn't it gorgeous? We're hardwired for this stuff. Did you know that when you touch a baby's foot, you're stimulating human growth hormone? It's okay, just get it out and do it. It's not really, it's okay. It's so cool. And like our brains, there's this really good book by, not Rita Carter, Sue Gerhardt, called Why Love Matters, and it talks about the way the brain actually develops with love and with not enough love, and the way all the different pruning goes on and predisposing children to depressive and anxiety disorders when they're older or not. Gorgeous book, really thick read though, you gotta muscle your way through some of the stuff in there. When there's not enough love, there's insecurity. Most people have insecure attachments. And we could talk about this one slide for a week, so I'm only going to talk about it for a couple of minutes, knowing we're only just touching the surface of this gorgeous water. Insecure avoidant. There was a test by Margaret Ainsworth, the 20-minute stranger test, and kids would be left, their mom would be playing with the child, the mom would leave when the child wasn't looking, in would come a stranger, 20 minutes later, stranger would leave, mom would come back, and then just watching. For the insecure kids, the insecure avoided, the kids kept playing when they noticed mom was gone, they kept playing, and when mom came back, the kid didn't run over to mom. But the physiological signs, because the kid was wired up, the sweat, the heart rate, the breathing, indicated immense distress. The insecure avoidant pattern also tends to be angry and entitled. And I can't go into all the whys and wherefores, but just know. Insecure preoccupied comes in two different flavors. Clingy. Clingy, you see that in adults when they get a text from someone, you know, that they've just started with. They're like, oh, I got a text, oh, this is so cool. What did he say? What did he say? Or like, is she going to see you tonight? You know, that kind of thing. There's this really obsessive preoccupation with having that proximity. And then caregiving, which is where a lot of people in the caring professions go. In the stranger test, clingy kids would get very distressed when their moms left, and when their moms left would tear to their moms, get scooped up, but just be practically unsoothable for a long time. It took them a really long time to calm down. For the caregiving ones, they also got upset when mommy left, but when mommy came back, the toddler would touch mommy's face and comfort mommy. It's heartbreaking. Because what the kid is saying, I have to make you okay so that you can take care of me because I don't think you got it in you right now. That toddler is saying, I'm alone in the world and I have to manage you. It's all heartbreaking, all of it. Disorganized attachment is kind of flipping between the extremes. So you see this in relationships where one person will chase the other and then they switch roles. And also, people can have kind of combined patterns or have different of these sorts of styles in different places. Like someone can be insecure, avoidant at work and clingy with their partner and unhealthily caregiving in their relationship with their children. So there can be combinations of styles according to different relationships. It gets worse. I'll just tell you very briefly about, there's infanticidal attachment, concrete and metaphorical. I know I'm just kind of zinging stuff at you. It's the metaphorical infanticidal attachment stuff I want to talk to you about, because that's what's most relevant for you with your children. You know how bright kids will get the wrong end of the stick a lot with information they think is complete but isn't? Metaphorical infanticidal attachment is when the child comes to the conclusion that mommy would be better off without them. Whether that's, and it has to do with parental overwhelm. So usually it's because a mom will have like 6 or 8 or more children, or the child's very ill and can see that, or mom's very ill. And it can also be just because they just feel like they're too needy and they can't help being needy. And as far as I'm concerned, being gifted is a special need. And so a lot of these kids who are really gifted can think that they might be, their parents, their family might be better off without them there. Bless them. So innocent and so destructive. It's tragic. And telling them doesn't make it better.
What does?
Good question. to be able to recognize it is, you know, when a child will try to hide their need from you. So they'll hide that they're bored, they'll hide that they're not doing homework. That could also come from shame as well, and that's another story. But when you can see that they're hiding their need from you, then that's a sign that this kind of stuff is going on. And part of it is saying so, but saying so relentlessly, but it's also holding the space of meeting their needs, of you not being overwhelmed by their need, because they pick up on it. They're like energy receivers. They can feel it in you. Especially sensitive, gifted children, and the most gifted children are very, very sensitive. They're like lie detectors. And even if you're lying to them for the most wonderful of reasons, because you're trying to hide that you're overwhelmed, they're going to know it anyway, pretty much. So part of it is what you do is being honest and clear. So for instance, one time I had been working, I was helping a client put together a document for court and around issues around abuse for herself and her children. And I was working 15-hour days and over a week and a half, and I wasn't very available, and I was really sorry, but oh my God, I was so exhausted at the end of that week and a half. And that was the week and a half, unfortunately, that my daughter got ill, and she needed to be taken to out-of-hours emergency care. And I was just so ratty. And I turned to her, and an irritated voice said, "Look, I'm exhausted, and it doesn't change your need. And it's my job to be here for you and find it inside of me to take care of you, even when it's hard for me. And that's my job. And you know why I'm doing it, honey?" She's like, "Because I love you, and I honor my job in parenting you. So I know it's hard for you to hear me being kind of stressed right now. You know it's me doing it to myself. It's got nothing to do with you, and you have every right to be ill right now. It just is, and we're taking care of it together."
Can I shift that though, children at that age? Because I say things like that sometimes. I get these striking when I tell them I'm all stressed out about something else, it's not you. But often I'm actually not sure if it's doing any good, whether he can actually comprehend why I'm stressed about.
They get it to the degree that they get it. The thing is your consistency with it. Because it's like spiraling. Every time you say it to them, they're different and they're more grown up, even if it's only a day later. And then over the years, they get used to you taking accountability, taking responsibility, apologizing when you fall off your own wagon, and getting back on it again. And they have that process. So they take it on board. And the ways to take it on board, and that grows, that capacity to take it on board grows over time. And we wound up having a great time playing in the waiting room. There was a guy with a ferret. It was very helpful. Okay, that's just outlining them in words. The thing is that all insecure strategies are innocent. All of them are innocent. Pained attempts to manage lack. All insecure strategies are codependent because they're relying on the outer world. If I can just get enough care, I'll be okay. Very important to recognize. Now, why did I want to bring this to your attention? Because your children will learn their attachment patterns from you. And if you want them to have the easiest time on their road to happiness and self-fulfillment and fulfilling their capacities and their learning potentials, secure attachment is the best way to go. The research is abundantly clear. Learning takes place best within a secure learning environment, secure attachment, which has implications for schools as well. My daughter's school actually has an attachment specialist in the school. And I'm very sorry to say as well, remember I told you to give up your insecurities? Well, here it is again. Most people have some rough spots in their relationships. Clean them up. Not because your relationship has to be perfect, it won't be. What you need to clean up is your process between the two of you and the assumptions coming in. Because you're modeling, whether you like it or not, you're leading by example. whether you like it or not, whether you're even aware of it or not, all the time, especially for these smart kids that are always looking. Oh, we got to the strategies. Yay! Because of their size, parents may be difficult to discipline properly. Caveats. Strategies are a means to an end. We talked about our jobs as parents. And that end must be in the genuine best interest of the child, which can be very inconvenient for us. But it can also be very inconvenient for the child, because sometimes what the child needs is for you to fulfill yourself. An example I have of this is a client of mine that was asking me, she was on income support, and she was like, I really want to play the piano, but I hardly have any money, but I really want to play. And her son was gifted in music and got a grant to get a piano. The piano was right there, calling to her. And I said, well, part of what your son needs to see is you fulfilling yourself. Get the piano lessons. It might mean less days out with him, but you need to do this for you, so you can show him that following your passion is important. So it's not always, about doing what the kid wants or what you think is in your kid's best interest. Sometimes it means following your best interest, which might mean taking you away. I was pregnant when I started my PhD, and I wanted my PhD. That was really important for me. It meant that my daughter had a couple of attachment issues in the first 6 months of her life. We were able to work through it. Strategies only work if they're presented in a context of a system of the verb of love. Empathy, reliability, care, and wisdom. Few of the components. Do discipline coldly or with intent to control, and you will regret it, and so will your children. Brad Blanton specifically talks about the generation of hatred in children towards parents who are well-intentioned. Do it with warmth and acceptance, however, and wisdom. Together you create intimacy, security, and cooperation, even with initial resistance. And discipline is not punishment here. We're going to have a slide about that. I don't do punishment. I don't hold with punishment at all. It's totally counterproductive. We'll talk about that. Listening. How you listen structures your and their response. Remember I talked about curiosity being absolutely pivotal. When you're curious, you don't know yet. When you already know, that's when you start saying da-da-da-da-da. But when you're curious, you ask. You listen more. You're listening to what the kids are feeling. So for instance, the word lazy is a word that encompasses so much and so much process. It's so complex. Somebody could not be doing their homework because they didn't understand it. They hate the teacher and don't want to give the teacher anything. They're bored. They're afraid of doing it well. They're afraid of doing it poorly. It could mean any number of things. Or they just hate the subject. But you gotta ask. You gotta be willing to ask and deconstruct what's going on. Get curious. When you ask why and you just listen with an open heart, you might have enough time to do a listening exercise. It's more empathic and respectful, and the kids respond to that because they know you're curious. They know you're just holding space. You're not trying to get them to do stuff. Do you like it when people try to get you to do stuff and you know they're maneuvering you around and you can see where they're going from a mile off? The challenge of having gifted kids is that they see your strategies, ta-da! So when you try to get them to do stuff, they generally don't respond very well to that. Listening is one of the first big things you need to do in order to do all kinds of stuff with rule building. It underlies a lot of the techniques here. It is so costly to not listen. Not listening is having a preconceived idea of what's best. Waiting for your kids to pause so you can jump in. Even if you're right or you have a really good idea, it's not listening. And not listening can build up years and years and years of debt that you will be asked to repay when your kid hits the teenage years. And they will ask you to repay it by putting up with their disrespect to you. In spades. So I have another client who really did work very hard in many ways, but didn't work on the respectful communication. She would respect him, but she didn't insist on the respect back. And wound up getting into all sorts of hot water in the teenage years. All sorts. It's two ways. And you're not expecting your child to do adult, mature listening to you, but enough to know, you know what, that's really not nice to do that to your brother, or to us, because we're all at the table. That's really selfish, and that's not who you are, darling. Shall we? It's a very simple one. I want you to pair up with someone you don't know. And what I'd like you to do, for whatever you're willing to share, to talk about a problem you're having. And the job of the other person is just listen, zip it. You can go, but that's it. Zip. If you need to blow your nose to keep your mouth closed, do that. Keep your mouth shut. Okay? It's that simple. And then we'll turn over. Okay? Okay. We don't have a second timer, but we'll manage. And so pick your people and get talking. Leave someone you don't know. Someone you don't know. Please, someone you don't know. I'm actually going to do it for 3 minutes, but keep talking. Okay, guys, I want you to switch over, and what I'm hearing is a lot of conversations. That's not the exercise. The exercise is to zip it and listen. Okay, 3 minutes the other side. Thank you so much for talking to each other and for listening to each other. I'm sorry, I know I'm interrupting some brilliant connections here. Come back. The time passes so fast, doesn't it, when you're just listening? What were your experiences of just listening to each other? Hard because? You're not the only.
You want to have a two-way conversation, you want to respond.
Well, you want to have empathy, or you want to partly problem solve. People say it's okay to feel like that, but have you thought about
And also
why do that?
sorry, I think the experiences are common as well, and as she was speaking, I kind of went, yep, I know that, yep, I've had that. So I think it was reciprocal. wasn't it?
Yeah.
You just
in our
want to
minds,
say that,
not-
you want to say, yeah,
Mm.
I understand.
A lot of chatter, yes.
As a speaker, I think that if someone's just listening to you and not contributing, you end up working a lot of things out yourself. I'm not someone who talks a lot very easily, but when I'm made to do it, I often end up working things through a lot better than if someone's interrupting me.
Yes, a few nods around, yes.
Talking is easier than thinking. Sometimes you try and think a problem through on your own, it's a lot harder. But then when you actually verbalise it to somebody else, it seems to become clear, and you can make more rational decisions yourself, even though the other person hasn't really told you what to do, but it's just helped you crystallise your thoughts.
Just by witnessing, because part of what you're doing by just listening is holding space. Do you get that? You all held space for each other. You weren't problem solving. What other kinds of reactions did you have? Did you find yourself kind of overcompensating for the zip lips by doing lots of exaggeration?
I think you also feel you've got to acknowledge that the person you're actually still listening to them rather than you're thinking about emptying the dishwasher or did I check the oil on the car this morning? You know, it's quite difficult to concentrate on listening. So you feel you need to give that feedback to the person that you're showing them respect that you are listening to them.
I'm going to give you another exercise. We're going to do a very short one of these. But I'm also going to give you a trick. There's micro movements in the beautiful muscle of the tongue. And those micro movements happen when we have unconscious thoughts. If we can still our tongue, it stills the thoughts. If you imagine there's a drop of oil right on the tip of your tongue, and you put that up right where your teeth meet your gum behind, goes quieter in there, doesn't it? The next exercise is to do that and just look at each other. No talking, just looking at each other. It's incredibly intimate, I know. Just for 1 minute.
Do you have to get the tongue in that position?
You don't have to, it's there for you if you want it.
Hey.
Okay, less than a minute. What was that like for you? It's very strange.
It's strange that you never said look at someone like that. You're just not used to it.
It's very rare to do. Well, unhabitual.
Yes. I'm Spanish, so I can find that difficult at all, yeah.
So, you know, things like differences in conversations between, spatial distances between bodies, when you don't know someone and when you do, have differences in different cultures, for instance, and then genders, all sorts of rules. So yeah, non-habitual, but not unnatural at all, actually. So it was really uncomfortable. I got it. What else?
A little threatening. I don't mean that. If someone did that to me, like at work or something, I'd think, oh, I'm going to get smacked or something. Yeah.
You feel quite vulnerable actually as well, because you realise that someone is looking at every line on your face, or infection in your rugged alert. You are actually, without any distraction, someone is trying to concentrate and make eye contact, and you're not used to necessarily being studied that intensely for that period of time by anyone.
At work, I have to speak to people all the time. And sometimes in that conversation, I think there's a pause, and I look at them, and they're looking at me, and I'm looking at them, and they're looking at me, and I think, how long does this go on? What are you rules here about how long you leave it before one of us who speaks to kind of draw an end to that?
Yeah, part of psychoanalytical training is being able to hold the silence. You see?
This is probably related. I probably felt like this because we had the talking exercise just before this. I kind of found myself thinking about what she had told me a minute ago. It was almost, because I think at that time you concentrated on what she's saying. But I was almost thinking, oh, so this is the person who was telling me that story, almost like trying to see the emotions.
Map it up, yeah. If you do this for 5 minutes, when you do this for 5 minutes, some stuff winds up happening. You muscle your way through that wall of discomfort and the giggles. And you wind up creating, and the vulnerability, you wind up creating incredible intimacy. Absolutely phenomenal intimacy with a stranger. Because recognizing the inner wisdom of someone, the unconditional constant of them, is irrespective of all the personality story stuff.
I have to say, I had an experience with a chap who I'm about to go to law against, and he has, I think, demonstrably lied in writing over 20 years, and he's stolen my last marriage. And I look into his eyes and I think, you're a horrible looking lizard. I don't have an answer simply. I think there's something positively wrong about the way he looks.
Again, you're raising so many interesting stuff that we don't have time to completely unpack. Part of what's going on is seeing them through those years of relating, and a vulnerability of you all know my mom was pretty abusive. For me to recognize her as a wonderful person and child of God, however you want to put it, could be very vulnerable making for me. So for years I was very invested in seeing her as evil. And it was, my being secure enough in myself to be able to move through that. It's not safe for you to have an intimate relationship, a vulnerable, intimate moment with this guy. It's not safe. Don't have it.
Well, I'd really like to. Clearly, he's not the sort of thing. Experience is proven.
It's very interesting you saying about listening, and I wonder how many of us have experience where subconsciously we do it all the time in our professional working lives, yet you don't necessarily think of it in the same way as your children. I work in quite a large organisation where I sit at the head of a large headquarters, a working environment, where there is a senior officer who sits above me, but no one else. So I sort of run the staff, yet he owns the organisation and the hours. And there's many a time when I go in to listen to him vent or express his frustrations, where I can say nothing, but and then he's worked through the problem and he sees the lights, but I've said nothing. He's then come out with the absolutely, thank you for that, you leave going. But equally, because as an organisation where the conduit, all the staff look look to me for direction and guidance to find out what the old man is thinking, or what is the tendency of wisdom of they've got an issue with it, they're not resourced at the time, they haven't was a problem, and equally listening to them and doing that they then work out, just like we've been having that conversation where you start, because you are having to talk rather than someone is then instructing you, you are working through your own problems. I recognise I probably do that the other way as well, and people go, thank you, I feel much better for coming to see you, and thank you for your wisdom again. And you think, but I don't do that with my children. So I'm always saying, I'm that total man from Mars saying, what you need to do is you need to.
Yes.
I'm giving them a solution that they don't recognise because they're a child and they don't necessarily want to do it.
And they haven't owned it yet because they haven't come up with it. I know there's another comment back there, but we're going to have to move on because we have a whole other raft of cool strategies. The thing is, of course, what you're raising, guess what? Kids need to be listened to too. Guess what? Kids need to be seen to. Not seen to, that came out wrong. They also need to be seen. Yeah, there's this is pulling off of inner wisdom literature and also nonviolent communication by Marshall Rosenberg. That information is in the resources here. You can get trained in nonviolent communication. And there's also Stephen Covey stuff about 7 habits of highly successful families. Responsibility and authority. Men and Women of the Corporation by Rosabeth Moss-Kenter talked about how the best way to get people to passive-aggressively resist is to give them responsibility without authority, is what most people do for their kids with chores. You're triggering the negatives of human psychology. We didn't mean to, sorry, oops. But that's what's happening. So they have to have authority as well as responsibility. Even when they're little. But appropriate responsibility and authority.
What do you mean by authority?
Authority is having a say in how things get done. Being involved in the rule setting. So responsibilities and the kinds of rules they set have to be age appropriate. And ability appropriate. For example, probably a 6-year-old wouldn't be able to manage their own sugar ingestion. Some people in their 50s have problems with these things. But it can be their choice of which sweets, which friends, which movies, which clothes, even partly which school, which extracurricular activities. And with coaching and support, kids can make bigger decisions. We do bedtime with Alia. She was always a wakey baby, which is one of the signs of giftedness in little ones. And she hardly slept at all, so I didn't either. And so when she was older, and she wanted to go to bed, her classmates were going to bed at 7:30, and she wasn't beginning to be tired until 9. I'm thinking a lot of nods. Yeah, so but she could stay up till midnight reading. And so we gave her a nightlight and said, honey, read as much as you want. But if you don't jump out of bed tomorrow to get ready for school, you've got to go to bed earlier than you did last night. Is that fair? Okay. She was dead tired the next morning, surprise, surprise. Okay, what time do you want to try going to bed tonight? So lights out are now at 9:30. It was negotiated and from the age of 6, getting her involved in bedtime stuff. When homework should be done and where, and sometimes even if it should be done. Was it you I was talking about with this? To share that example of again with giftedness, it often happens that the work they're done is stupid for them, utterly pointless. And so part of your journey as a parent and championing your child is to negotiate with the school. In the meanwhile, there's a time lag, and they're going to get some boring homework. So I told my daughter, you know what, honey? I can see why you don't want to do this, because you can do this very easily, and that's boring. And I know you like to be really engaged and interested in stuff. So here's the deal. It's your choice, darling. If you don't do it because it's really boring, that's okay. It really is okay, and I will support the decision. I will go in and tell the teacher you didn't want to do it because it's boring. And your teacher's response will probably be getting her back up and not looking on you favorably and making it even harder to get you homework that you do deserve. Or you can be bored for half an hour doing this stupid busy work and leave it to me to keep on fighting your side. It's your choice, honey. Either one's really okay. And she made her decision. I'm not going to tell you what her decision was because it's irrelevant. It was her decision. And I supported her in her decision. And I championed her. Because that's my job. Make sense? So involving them in appropriate ways, we can coach them through it. They can make bigger decisions.
With the clearing the table issue, with the clearing up the arrangement, how can one be given authority to assert in that situation?
Family meeting, we do have them less now actually, but family meetings to talk about stuff. We always start off with gratitude, so thanking each other for stuff. Sometimes it gets really silly and cute, and sometimes people have to pretend they're really thinking hard about stuff to thank each other for. But gratitude's a good place to start because it sets the scene. And then you kind of like raise issues and everybody gets to put agenda items on. Kids usually have less agenda items to put on, sometimes they have more. And for cleaning the table stuff, that's something that I would raise as a parent and say, this is as I see it, honey. And then talk about the responsibility and the selfishness and being unfair, because gifted kids particularly tend to care a lot about injustice. So if you can frame them as being unfair, they'll tend to really back away from that stinking bit of rotten meat. So then when they agree to what they're going to agree to, and then up to you to coach and manage that interaction, then later when it comes time to clean up, like what I said earlier, it's their word. You've had a family meeting about that, it was official. You can even get them to put the wool and sign it and stick it on the fridge, which is Cialdini called Influence. Rob Cialdini wrote a book called Influence and talked about this stuff. Fantastic. Essential for parenting, actually, even though it doesn't talk once about a parenting issue in the whole book. It is essential for parenting. Because the ways of influencing your child, and that's good at getting compliance, is getting them to sign up for it. Some of it's literally signing up. And then if it doesn't happen, you've also already agreed upon, well, okay, honey, this is now, there's nothing to clean up now. What do you think should happen if you then refuse or you don't? What do you think should happen, sweetie? And what usually happens, as is talked about in Raising Resilient Children by Brooks and someone else I'm forgetting offhand, is that the children will come up with consequences that are way harsher than anything you would have come up with. So then you're coaching them into something less, which means you get the kudos of being like the good guy, when they're the ones that came up with the consequences. So it's all laid out for you before it happens. And it's fair, because everyone's come on board with it. There's an issue of consent. You cannot say yes unless you can also say no. You cannot say no unless you can also say yes. So that's why we have things like informed consent and statutory limits of consent and sex for age, stuff like that, yeah? Because a 12-year-old can't say yes. He just doesn't know. It's not fair to put that consent on them. We have to be able to say yes or no in order to make a choice. They have to choose to do that thing because they are choosing it. So they have to buy into it. In order for them to buy into it, you've got to involve them in the process of owning it. Like with the bedtime rule. We never have a problem with bedtime, ever. Absolutely ever. We spent months getting to that place. Telling me, yes, I've got you. We spent months getting that buy-in. But now we've got it. Those months of work paid off. Years later, she goes to bed. It's lights out time, honey. Okay. That's it. It's joyous. We worked for it. And the depth and breadth, of course, will increase over time. Greater independence comes with greater authoritative responsibilities and vice versa. Has to make sense for the kid. And this is the flip side of authority and responsibilities, including making decisions. So there's a concept of natural consequences. The idea, as Stephen Covey says, you pick up one end of the stick, you pick up the other. You go to bed too late, you're going to be tired in the morning. You don't have to do anything. They don't want to zip up their coat, they're going to get cold. You don't have to do anything. But if you make it a power issue, I told you you should have zipped up your coat. They'd rather be cold. You gotta just let them have the natural consequences when the natural consequences are your gifts. They make it easy for you. The laws of physics do your parenting for you. Let it happen.
Is it, should you not take the age into account? I mean, so what my 8-year-old can make the connection between his actions and consequences, but my 5-year-old is nowhere near it. We have this issue of code. That's why I was fronted. She'll catch a cold, she'll be sick. Still, there is absolutely no connection between not putting something on and catching a cold. So I do find myself in a position where I say, you have to put a coat on her because of the sex. Because she's not making that.
Well, you can talk about it and say, look, I know that you really like your coat open, but I know more stuff than you do on this, and I'm wondering if you can trust me. I wonder if you can trust me. If it's going to be this degree or colder, you have to zip up your coat for your body because I'm helping you learn how to take care of your body, and that's my job. But if it's above this temperature, even though I would zip up my coat, and I do, if you don't want to, that's your choice.
It isn't some brightest children what they partly do is they don't take your word for it. You're telling them they have to
So
stress
go on
test
Google
it,
and research
go
it.
to it to break it, and then they go, oh, I've done that, yes.
Yes.
If you say don't play matches, you'll burn yourself or something.
Yeah.
They'll go and then hold it and hold it and hold it and then go, ow!
Yes.
Right.
And you make sure that you do that with them
Yeah.
when they're not holding it over a pile of newspapers.
Absolutely.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
My son's walks all the way to school with no shoes on.
Yeah.
and I walk behind him looking to, well, in front of him, to make sure in the same class. And people look to him in the street like he must be the worst possible
Yeah.
mother. But, that's...
It depends on where you live too. In New York City, I wound up getting a staph infection. And a staph infection is an infection of the flesh. And those used to lead to amputations because I liked walking barefoot as well, and I was walking in Central Park. And I don't know where I got it from. I wasn't cut or anything. But I got a staph infection from walking in Central Park barefoot. So, yeah, so we have to kind of very compassionately pull rank sometimes. See, but because I pull rank so infrequently, she knows. And it's like, and we can Google this later, I can show you the research later. Can you please trust me now? Because so it's not an issue of compliance, it's an issue of trust, which is very different. Because that's leveraging off of the love you have for each other. And the intimacy.
Partly you're saying something that you have all this experience that, how old are you, how old am I? Partly I've had this experience, I'm giving you the benefit of my experience, and then let's go, okay, well, you're just telling me to control you. I think it's how you...
It's what you're saying.
Well.
People have to make their own mistakes and learn it and own it,
Yeah.
But at the same time, the risks that they take aren't, am I really going to kill myself if I slip off a cliff? You have to put the limits in there somewhere.
Some of it can also build on, as you say, on that reciprocity, because as much as you might want to explain why you know better, asking them why not, why not, why don't you want to do this?
Might also be a reason.
Yeah. But the other thing that I did with Emily once was I said, you can decide that I have to do the same as you. And she said, why? And I said, just because that's what I want to do. So if you go with, in this case, your co-parent said, I have to too. Okay? And she kind of, for her it was the kind of shock of coming out of just doing what I want.
Yes.
But but you'll be really cold, won't you? Yes, I will, but I will do that because that's what you were telling me that, and she, it wasn't that, I can't even remember what examples now.
That's a
Pushing
good
it back
one.
to her made her change her mind.
It's a good one if there are some very physical things about body temperature. My daughter is such a Brit. She was like practically a polar bear. I'll be wearing 3 layers and a zipped up jacket, and she'll be wearing a short sleeve t-shirt and a light jumper unzipped. And she's comfortable, she's not cold. So I can't map my body experiences onto her and tell her what she should do with hers. So as long as it's not that, that's great. Because it gets her to, like you said, come out of herself. We got more to go through. Okay. Involve children in deciding consequences for rule breaches when there are no natural consequences. So again, this is without my daughter's permission. I apologize in advance if she ever sees this video. We'll tap on it. She used to pick her nose and wipe it on stuff. And yeah. And so there was no natural consequence besides the furniture having, snot. Ugh. And so we just said, okay, honey, you know this is wrong. You know you could have gotten a tissue. And we discussed it, and the end result was she was reading and didn't want to get up to get a tissue. Because she was reading. I was like, actually, that was really selfish. And do you think I should clean that up? Really? She's like, no. I said, okay, so we'll help you clean it up. It took her like 5 times longer than it would have done for us. But she cleaned up her snot, and she agreed that she should. And if we ever found more of it, she would give us some of her allowance in addition to her cleaning it up. That was her idea. Yeah? So involve them. But also, it's about, you can get angry, but from a high quality mindset. Like, oh, that is really disgusting, honey. I love you, but I don't love that dried snot. And really separating it out. Oh, yeah, and rules apply to big people and little people alike. So you're also accountable, which can be really hard, but to be consistent, you need to do it. Accountability. Okay, you need to be honest with them. Ali had a quote. I asked her if she had a room full of parents and she could tell them things that would help them be better parents. She came up with this quote. Tell them the truth. If the child finds out the parents have been lying, they would be angry and treat you with less respect. Yeah? I'll pass that on. Admitting your mistakes doesn't diminish your authority, but opens up opportunities for you to enhance your authority because of the increase in intimacy and processing. There's a process of teshuvah, of doing sorry. You don't just say sorry and that's the end of it. No, there's a process involved. You admit it, that you messed up, you say sorry, you think about it, you make changes. Or make up for it, or make up for it. So that's about talking through process and talking about why. You often have to shepherd your kids through that. Accountability leads to reliability and compliance.
I really want to rush through stuff, but about saying sorry, I asked a similar question before. How do children process it when you say sorry? You say, okay, I messed up, I did this, I shouted, whatever.
Depends on how you say it. It's about context. Remember, it's all a system. You can say or do different things. If I make her pay 20p for each little bit of snot and I make her clean it up, that's different than her being on board with cleaning it. The end result is her spraying and wiping and spraying and wiping, but it's a completely different relationship context. It has to come from that integrity of your okayness and your being chilled out, that inner wisdom stuff. I know I'm glossing over it, but there's more to do, but it's about the system. Helping you out at home. It's not helping you, it's contributing to the family that they love so much. That takes all the power struggles out of it. And then talks them about accountability, about teamwork, yeah? And then also about selfishness. So these are things that my daughter, she doesn't make her bed because she sleeps in her cave now because she doesn't have a bed. But she tidies her room. She's been doing that for 2.5 years. She puts the laundry in the hamper properly. If it's not in there, it doesn't get washed. If her socks are curled up, they don't get washed. That's it. And I hold that. Holding those boundaries, we got to get to that boundary slide. Racing to the boundary slide. No punishment or naughtiness. Okay, good boy or naughty boy, good girl, naughty girl. Okay, I'm just going to talk you through this quickly. A child's global goodness, if you say, oh, good girl, good boy, a child's global goodness is reliant on that assessment in that moment, which is just inaccurate. Being good or bad is then indexed to parental approval, and social approval is a second best for unconditional love and acceptance. The child's center of gravity is outside of themselves, and they can really fall over with this, yeah? Seeking approval is a losing and addictive prospect. Children's misbehavior would be a way of communicating something really important to us without words. So my daughter was wetting her pants until very recently. And we had a really long talk about it, and what it came up with is actually, she knew that I still missed Aiden, her brother, and she really missed Aiden, her brother, and she wanted me to have a baby. Oh, so sweet. so innocent and so well-intentioned, but she really needed to stop wetting her pants. So we talked it through and we did tapping on it. You know, they talk to us without words, with their behavior, in ways that takes a lot of acceptance and kindness and space and curiosity to unpick. You just have to be willing to listen, not just with your ears, but with your heart. Really listen to them, really see them. Punishment is just counterproductive. Punishment takes away their autonomy and their authority. It undermines their sense of self. It's absolutely pointless and destructive for your entire relationship and their sense of self-worth. Don't do it. Even if the same consequences happen, not to do it from a position of punishment. Does that make sense? Okay. Holding your children accountable for your feelings fosters unhealthy codependency. Not holding your child accountable for their feelings fosters unhealthy codependency, because then they look to you to make them feel better, and then you're not really raising them to be independent or self-centered in a beautiful way of being centered in the self and their core. For Ali's tantrums now, she can either talk herself out of it, or we can talk her out of it literally within a minute. Or she's having what we're calling an under-the-table moment. She tends to hide when she's overwhelmed. It's like, okay, honey, you want to have an under-the-table moment? We're here when you come out, sweetie. You know, they just do the drama, and you're there for them when they come back. No problem. Boundaries. Woo, we got there. Okay, so don't give them, this is another one of Ali's little gems, don't give them whatever they want, or they will get too used to having everything they want. Then they will have terrible tantrums, and you'll have to pay extra for the babysitter. Oops, sorry. Different parenting styles. It also has to do when you're kids with different attachment styles. So it's very deeply rooted issues here, not something that can just be like just chopped out within one conversation. When parents set different boundaries and are hashing them out frequently, this inconsistent boundary setting triggers addictive resistance from your children. Addictive resistance from your children. Compulsive resistance from your children. Okay, video game programmers, they know this. They program in random rewards. So if you go to this corner, you might get like a health pack or whatever, but sometimes you don't. So you keep on going back to the health pack. And of course, with rats as well, either for food or for pleasure-stimulating stuff, if they press the lever and sometimes they get it and sometimes they don't, they're just working the lever, working the lever, working the lever. Same thing with your kids. If you're inconsistent with your boundaries, then you have given them inconsistent rewards, and you have triggered rat psychology. You have triggered them to keep on pushing your button, and push your button, and push your button, to see if you're going to say yes again. When you said no. When you said you were going to say no, but you said yes 25 times ago, they're still hanging on. And the problem with gifted kids is they'll hang on longer than other kids, push you harder than other kids. So you really have to be even firmer than other parents. Yeah?
So when my kid does that, I just say, no, but ask me again in 30 seconds.
It's holding the boundary. It's no is no. There's nothing equivocal about it. It's no, you're just wasting your breath now, honey, and you're wasting our time. There's a lot of other things we both want to be doing here. It's already no. That's it. If there are exceptions, and that I'm quoting myself, yeah, I've said this to her. If you do have exceptions, there are reasons that you can explicate carefully, because they will look for the millimeter space where the rules don't apply. You delineate that millimeter square space carefully. So there was one time I told her I had let a rule go because I was really tired. She said, Shoshana, are you tired? The next week, she started off with, are you tired? She timed it, bless her. We know from the USSR, Cialdini talks about this. It was a fantastic example, Having a privilege and then having it taken away is like anathema. Absolutely anathema. I don't know if you've ever had it in work, where you had a privilege and then they took it away, or responsibility and they took it away. Oh, it just gets right up your nose. And what it engenders is the issue around scarcity, and people will fight scarcity. So when inconsistent boundary setting triggers this specific issue around privilege and scarcity. And this is volcanic, absolutely volcanic. The intensity of rage that will come at you for this is intense. You must be consistent. Called time. This was such an important one. So we talked about knowing in advance where the exceptions are, and the boundaries and rules known in advance where possible, and having regular family meetings while you get into the rhythm of knowing what your family rules are, everybody working them out. Family meetings is something Stephen Covey talks about a lot as well. This is the last slide. It's an art. This is not a prescription. It is such an art, especially with gifted children. Listening, allowing, responding, engaging, being charmed by them. Boundary holding and bending and reformulating. It takes even more skill not to be dogmatic with a boundary. Parenting gifted kids is even harder. And remembering that your parenting is systemic, that one action in one context will trigger a completely different response than the same action in another context of the system. Your authority comes from both your systemic coherence and your warmth. And be as conscious and deliberate in your leadership as you can. Got loads and loads and loads of resources for you. I won't go through these all. Here's the 5 love languages I talked about that I couldn't talk about. How to talk so kids will listen, and listen so kids will talk. This is something Alia and I would go through because it's got cartoons in it, so younger children can come on board with it too. From the age of 5, we were doing this one. She'd say, you could do more of that. Or you do that really well. It's a great 360. Parenting from the heart talks about inner wisdom and parenting. Nonviolent communication talks about that listening. Influence, Cialdini. Neurolinguistic programming for parents, there's a lot of good books out there, but it's stuff like, don't run down the aisle. It's the same thing as saying, don't think of a giraffe with pink spots. Yeah, so there's loads of stuff like that in the NLP books to tell you about. 5 love languages. Raising Resilient Children talks about islands of competence and resilience specifically, fantastic book. Where they also have a specialist one in addition for kids on the autistic spectrum. Somebody Should Have Told Us is about inner wisdom. You can be happy no matter what, inner wisdom. For those of you in marriages that you're questioning at all, Conscious Loving, The Journey to Co-Commitment, really working out attachment issues here. Radical Honesty, the guy I quoted with you a couple of times, and you can arrange a consultation. And also there's Emotional Freedom Technique to get through moments of being major intensity. I didn't talk about that today, I talked about that yesterday. So there you have it, folks. And I want to end it just on a note of encouragement to really remember, and this is a real cheerleading thing, you guys are here. You guys are the elite. You guys are the elite. The elite that cares so much about parenting your children effectively that you have given up your time to be here. How cool are you? You're awesome. Thank you for being here.